A monstrous crime. 2-year-old Kaylee Anthony missing for months, found dead in the woods. Her tiny body shoved in a trash bag, duct tape covering her mouth. The toddler's own mother, Casey Anthony, charged with murder. Judge Stan Strickland holding hearing after hearing, eventually setting her trial date for May of 2011. Strickland leaving the case last month, the defense claiming he was biased against Casey because he had a talk with a blogger. Now the accused killer is answering to a new judge who's not messing around. This morning, Judge Perry ripping through defense motions, change of venue, party pictures, and hearsay testimony. This is Florida versus Casey Anthony, and it's on In Session. This is In Session. I'm Vinny Politan. Today, the judge in the Casey Anthony case ruling on some key pretrial motions. Let's speak with someone who's been following the case from the very beginning. In Session correspondent Gene Casares is with us from Orlando. In Session legal contributor Sunny Hostin is in New York. Plus, Susan Constantine is also with us. She's a body language expert who can help us understand the messages that were not even being said verbally inside that courtroom. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Susan, let me start with you. You're inside the courtroom. You're observing Casey Anthony. What did you see today in her body language as she sat in the courtroom?
Well, she has really been able to tame down her soothing gestures. So you don't see her fidgeting quite as much. There's just some mild soothing gestures where she's kind of pruning herself, making sure that she looks okay. That's really more about nervousness. That's very common with Casey. But towards the very end,
Susan, let me just stop you right there. So what you're saying is that she seemed more comfortable this morning inside that courtroom than she has in the past?
On her outward demeanor. Although what I'd like to pinpoint is that where she was unable to conceal it was really more in her breathing. So on her outward appearance, she seemed very controlled. She did very slight movements in pruning herself, but you could see the very deep sighs and release in her breathing because I was sitting right behind her, and that's fear.
Fear.
Well,
there's a lot at stake here. Obviously, her life is at stake. This is a death penalty case. This morning, they talked about a change of venue, and they're going to look like they're going to stay in Orlando, but they're going to bring jurors from someplace else. In the way she interacts with her attorneys, did you notice anything there, Susan, from Casey Anthony?
Well, that's a very good point because actually at this point in these hearings, she really didn't interact too much with her attorneys. She's very still. She's very controlled. She's sitting up like a good student. She's not really interacting with her attorneys. I also didn't really see her making very many notes. So at this hearing, there was not a lot of interaction with her attorneys. There was more interaction between the attorneys than there was with Casey.
And how about any interaction with her parents, George and Cindy Anthony? We saw that they were in court this morning. Was there anything between George, Cindy, and Casey Anthony today?
Well, what I noticed is actually at the end of the hearing that when Casey was walking out, she looked over to her mom and dad. She had what we called a concealed smell, so she's smelling without showing the teeth. And then she says, "Happy Mother's Day. I love you." And then when I turned around, that's when I saw her mom. And of course, her mom had the typical endearing facial expression was, that was her daughter. She felt it. There was a connection there.
And in reading George and Cindy Anthony and the way that they interact with their daughter, because they're really in a difficult position. Their granddaughter is dead. We know that there's some statements they've made in the past that perhaps could be used against Casey Anthony at trial. But it seems that they are supporting their daughter. Do you get anything from the way they act and react inside that courtroom? What's going on with George and Cindy Anthony?
Well, first of all, the fact that they're there every single time. They're there from the beginning of the hearings all the way throughout. But what I'd like to share with you is that, first of all, that Casey Anthony's father, George, he has such an appearance of just absolute defeat. I mean, depression, sadness. I'm not sure that you could really become even more sad other than breaking out in tears. But he has that real kind of sense of hopelessness. He's over it. He's tired. He's exhausted. And I also noticed that the same thing with his wife.